Hello, this is Liana Andreasen from the English department. I'm here to present the novel Beloved by Toni Morrison, and hopefully you'll be interested enough to read the book. But I want to also talk about why I think this book is one of the best novels of all time and one of the most significant in the history of American literature. And to me personally, it's an important book because it may have actually given me the incentive to come to the United States. I'm originally from Romania, and reading this book, I decided I wanted to write my thesis on it. And as I delved deeper into the research and I read more books by Toni Morrison, I just became fascinated by the subject, and I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to be in the country where I could be more exposed to the literature and the history connected to it. So, just personally, it's a very important book to me. I will share my screen now so I can start the PowerPoint presentation. So, um, this is the novel Beloved, and it's my presentation as part of the English Department series, lecture series that this semester is taking place online. This novel, I'm showing here also the author, Toni Morrison. This novel was published in 1987, and it's still considered her best novel. And it's partly because it tackles such an important topic, which is not just slavery, but one of the worst things that people can imagine, of course, due to the horrors of slavery. In this book, we see a mother killing her child. So because of the impact of such a topic, this book stands out, but also because of how beautifully written it is. It's almost as if you're reading a poem, a full book length poem. So I call it a literary jewel. It's one of the most emotionally gripping depictions of slavery in American fiction, and it's a timeless testimony to the scars of America's past. And as I say here in the slide, it ensured, along with other works, her place as one of the most valuable writers of this country and the world. And you see here President Obama presenting her with a medal. I will very quickly go over the summary. And this is one of the illustrations in the upper left corner to the book, and depicting the main character, Setha, and her 4 children. And this book takes place right after the Civil War. Former slave Setha and her daughter Denver live in a house that is haunted by a dead baby, which is basically Beloved, the character. But at that time, they don't know. They only know that it's a ghost of her baby, but they don't know that she will come back to life. So the ghost later becomes embodied into a young woman and assumes the name Beloved that she takes from her gravestone. Denver, her sister, is very happy to have her there as a sister. And Setha, too, as a mother, is very happy that her daughter is back, and she's happy that she can atone for the murder of her baby. Past and present are woven into the story, and we find out why the murder took place when runaway Setha saw school teacher, her incredibly cruel former owner, come for her children. And now in the present, the reunification of the family is complicated by Setha's new relationship with Paul D., who is also a former slave. And so they have a relationship that is kind of destroyed by Beloved because she ends up stealing her mother's boyfriend. And finally, Beloved becomes so insatiable. She starts, she actually becomes pregnant, but she wants to make up for her lost life. So she takes everything from her mother, the food, her lover, her love, and also almost her life. So when Denver, the other daughter, sees her mother waste away, she needs to find a way to save her from this embodiment of her past that can end up killing her. So I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but this is pretty much what happens: a return of the daughter, and then the other daughter sees, at some point, sees it as necessary to intervene somehow and get the community involved to save her mother. Um, some of the thematic of the novel, the themes in the novel, of course, the most obvious one is slavery and the horrors of slavery. And Toni Morrison, I will read here from the slide, Toni Morrison explores the question, what could possibly push a mother to kill her own baby? She's helping readers understand that slavery reduced a human being's space for individual aspirations to almost nothing, to the point that a mother could not see any room for a decent human life in her child's future, which is why she kills her. So Toni Morrison is asking us to stretch our imagination to understand that it actually, such a horror, such a way to rob a person of life, of individuality, of identity, can bring them to the point of not wanting to give the same to their child. It's also a novel about history, obviously, because it's inspired by um, the history of slavery, even though Toni Morrison wrote this much later, but she wanted to find out for herself what slavery did to people. So the novel raises the question, can we forget and should we forget a traumatic past? Because, of course, obviously, a lot of people want to forget it. They say, let's just um, move on. Let's move on and forget slavery. So the character Beloved has a primarily symbolic meaning, as she says, no, the past will never not be with us, especially the evils of history. So she comes back to say, I am still here, as a representation of history. And also, if we don't redress history's wrongs in the present, they are here to haunt us. And they will haunt us forever if we don't redress the wrongs. Um, of course, the novel is also about a ghost. And by the way, these illustrations are by Joe Moores, and there are two more on this page. And one depicts the moment when Denver is kneeling next to a dress, a wedding dress that her mother walks, a scene that their mother walks in on. And that's before she comes back as a person. So anyway, the ghost as a character, technically this is a ghost story. And in a way it's also a detective story because we get to find out how a killing took place, and why. So Beloved is technically a ghost story, as Setha, the mother who killed her own baby, is given a second chance to have her daughter in her life when the girl returns from the dead in the form of an 18-year-old girl, but with the mind of a toddler. So Beloved is basically learning about the world, because she left it at the point where she didn't understand much about it. And all she knew at the time that she died was her mother and her mother's face. And that's why we have a few glimpses from the world of the dead where Beloved as a dead child, reminisces about her face, which is the face of her mother, in fact. And it's also a novel about love, because another question that Toni Morrison asks is, can or is it possible for one to love when confined in the bonds of slavery? Can one love a child? Is romantic love possible? So, of course, there are romantic aspects to the book. There's Poldi, who comes back also and has a relationship with Setha, who is depicted here with a tree on her back, which is one of the most striking images of the character Setha. And of course, the tree are her scars from being whipped as a slave. But also, the tree symbolically would represent the fact that everything that has roots also has or also has life above the roots, right? So even pain can make us alive, and we also are rooted in the past. So there's a lot of symbolism in this novel. I'm taking a little detour here to talk about one thing that is very disturbing and very controversial, that through my research, I found out that around the time of slavery, babies, black babies, were considered less valuable than not just than any human, but less valuable than an alligator. So at that time, it's not clear necessarily today if it was something that really happened, because some people deny that it happened. Little babies, black babies, being used as alligator bait. And there's a lot of illustrations and a lot of depictions and even artifacts that are from the time period, such as the one which is a little statue of an alligator holding a black baby. And basically, I, as the slide says, so gator bait is about the fact that some historians deny, or the fact that is denied by some historians, but there's a lot of proof that babies of slaves were used sometimes as bait to catch alligators. People would buy the much cheaper black child from the owners, not from the parents, but it was for the purpose of catching the much more expensive alligator. So there was a lot of money to be made. Many times this resulted in the death of the child. So even to this day, we still have some songs, pictures, decorative objects that show gator bait to be a stereotype for black children. Even mothers would sing to their child, my little gator bait, which shows the high stakes for a mother at the time of slavery. So if anybody's wondering, how could a mother kill her child? Well, this was what the child could become. The child could become trash, could become food for an alligator, for people who wanted money. So the mother had no rights to her child, and her baby could be snatched away and possibly killed or cruelly exploited, which with no means to stop white people from deciding her child's fate. So this is what was at stake. Moving on to another aspect, the more, let's say, the context of other of myths, legends, and other pieces of literature that contain this idea of a mother killing her own child or children. So we have a long history in our culture, in Western culture, but not just Western culture. In all cultures of the world, there's this figure of the mother who at some point is pushed to kill her children. So Toni Morrison becomes part of this tradition, literary and cultural tradition of the motherly infanticide. So we have, of course, Medea, which is a more well-known one in Greek mythology. So it was made famous by Euripides. Medea was a powerful sorceress, scorned and betrayed by her husband Jason, who married another person who was a queen. She ends up taking revenge by killing him, Jason, and his new wife, and then also she murders her own two children. La Llorona is more known here in South Texas and in other parts of Southwest United States and in Mexico. So in Latino Southwestern legends, La Llorona, the weeping woman, haunts rivers and lakes in search of her drowned children. And in some versions of the story, she was the one who killed them after she was betrayed by her lover. There are different versions. Of course, it's an old legend, so it has many branching off versions of it. So in some versions, she just finds them dead. In some versions, she accidentally, just but through neglect, kills them, but not directly. So in any case, that's another well-known woman who is considered to have killed her children. And this is also part of a larger maybe stereotype of the woman as dangerous. So we have many different mythologies that portray women as maybe insane, maybe dangerous to men. So here in the third column, I'm saying many women are seen as destructive in myths and literature, such as Medusa, Hecuba, Mami Wata in Africa, the demon Lilith, etc. Many, many, many cultural figures that are either fantasy characters or based on some real character. So patriarchal culture, I'm saying here, see motherhood as a threat. So there are a lot of explanations. Psychologists and psychoanalysts try to explain this fear of the woman, fear of the mother, as a fear from patriarchal societies of motherhood as a threat to property, since men usually claim ownership of the children, so women are a threat to their property. Of course, women themselves are seen as property, and they're also seen as a hindrance, no matter how close their bond is with their child. In Beloved, Seta is a strong woman who opposes male ownership of her child in any way that she still has available to her, which is death. So she is just part of this continuity, cultural continuity of kind of a double-edged sword, both showing the strong bond of women with their children and also the fear by men that women can compete with them for what they see as property. There is a true story that Toni Morrison based the novel Beloved on, which is she saw just a piece of old story in journal, and so she explored that topic. The only thing that she knew was that there was this mother who, there's a little account of Margaret Gardner, who escaped from a Kentucky plantation in 1856, along with her family. And when her former owner caught up with her in Ohio, she killed her daughter to prevent her return to slavery. And basically, she uses the same setting. So the killing of Beloved takes place in Ohio, where Seta has fled and where she has started a new life. But so she only had this little piece of a story, which she turned into a whole novel, of course, using her imagination. So very little is really based on true story. I will play a little bit of her explanation for how she managed to create this whole character through her imagination, by trying to imagine what it's like to be a mother who has to kill her daughter. So I'm going to start at minute 1.
By that time, I deliberately, I remember thinking about Beloved, I really don't want to do this. I really wanted to talk about that incident with a historical figure who had died. But I was really upset because I had to talk about slavery in particular, because I assumed I knew everything anyway, so. And I didn't want to dredge it up. The same thing I'm accusing everybody else of, because emotionally it's difficult.
Yes.
So I did, and it was very, very hard, not so much to find the language for it. That was difficult enough. But for me, in the process of writing, it is just not authentic or legitimate enough for me to look at it from the outside. You know, I always tell my students, it's not a black father, it's yours. Yes. You know the one you know?
Yes.
That one. So if I'm going to imagine what it takes to kill your baby, then I have to put in my arms my baby. The one that...
Get into the feelings.
That's right.
Yes.
And when that happens, and it's difficult, then the language just pares down. You don't get ornamental with that. You get very still, very clean-limbed, and very quiet. Because the event itself is bigger than language.
But you have to want to know that.
But you have got to
Yes.
want to know that.
Yes.
So you can get there. So you can get there and say it.
That's right.
Somebody asked me once, they said, where's that part in Beloved? I can't find it where she actually cuts,
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. We started looking. And I said, it was so buried. I mean, you know it all along because they said so. But the actual moment when it happens is so buried in the text, you can barely find it, which is precisely what one wanted it to be.
So, returning to my presentation, I found the fragment that she was talking about. So, I just thought it was funny that she said that it was so hidden. It really isn't a long part of the book. So when it does happen, it's part of the story, that part of the truth that Setha avoids telling Paul D. And when he finally finds out what she did, she tells her, and this is at the top of this slide, she tells her, "Your love is too thick." And her answer is one of the most memorable lines in the book. Love is or it ain't. So then let me read the part where we hear about the killing. And it reads like a poem. So simple. She was squatting in the garden, and when she saw them coming and recognized the school teacher's hat, she heard wings. Little hummingbirds struck their needle beaks right through her headcloth, into her hair, and beat their wings. And if she thought anything, it was no, 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 no. Simple. She just flew, collected every bit of life she had made, all the parts of her that were precious and fine and beautiful, and carried, pushed, dragged them through the veil, out, away, over there where no one could hurt them, over there, outside this place where they could be safe. And the hummingbird wings beat on. And I say that here at the bottom, Setha, in fact, intended to kill all her children, but only managed to kill one, the crawling already baby, which is what she calls her at the beginning. The ghost of the baby is symbolically a representation of the trauma of this moment, um, which will never be undone, but it will also never be removed from the memory of the living. In a way, slavery itself is a trauma that can never be undone, but will haunt America's history forever. So this moment is the key to this book, how the killing was not seen as an evil act, but an act of saving the child. And she wanted to save all of them, but of course, as I said, she only managed to kill one of them, but she wanted them to not be in that painful, painful place. And I wanted to talk about a few deeper layers of the novel, which I highlighted here on this slide. Beloved is a novel in which memory, specifically cultural memory, shapes the lives of the characters. The culture or identity of African American people is marked by uprooting. So the tree, of course, as I said before, is a very important symbol in the book. And so they try to find anchors to their identity because they've been uprooted, because society has not provided them with stable points of reference. They're defined as other animals, property by the world around them, around us, um, through the mere fact that they were born Black. So, of course, I'm saying us because we are still guilty. We're not completely free of that pain. African American communities are still haunted by this idea that they are not quite whole, that they're not a full person. Obviously, during slavery, they were defined as half a person. So again, the novel, to go back to the slide, it's a novel about identity, not one to be retrieved, but one to be put together from pieces. Beloved's identity is ghostly because identity is elusive for people born slaves. What they find is that togetherness, So the togetherness, idea of togetherness, can give them a way toward identity and help them make a future for themselves instead of being bound to the past and its suffering. And there's, of course, the scar, the tree scar on Seta's back is kind of significant in this illustration here, by Ella Strickland de Souza. Sorry, I put this in the corner. As painful as the scars are, they symbolically provide the roots to a community that needs to grow new branches, new leaves, and blooms. So the roots are painful, but they're there and you cannot get rid of them. You just have to find a way to get nourished by them. That's the idea, that the past, even if it's painful and traumatic, it does nourish the future, because there is no future without a past. Now, there's, of course, some more specific symbolism to the ghost. Beloved, literally as a character and as a ghost, absorbs the stories of all the slaves that died and the people who were, especially she absorbs the story of the people who were brought to America from Africa. So in the world of the dead, where the little baby is thrown after her death, she becomes one with these slaves on the slave ships. And this is one of the most moving parts in the book, where she speaks from that world of the dead. So I included this here because it illustrates this idea that as a symbol of the past, she absorbs the stories of slaves and becomes the story of slavery itself. So I'm going to read this. It's very chilling. It's very pretty much based on Toni Morrison's research of that, how this transportation of the slaves happened. So all of it is now. It is always now. There will never be a time when I'm not crouching and watching others who are crouching too. I'm always crouching. The man on my face is dead. His face is not mine. His mouth smells sweet, but his eyes are locked. The men without skin bring us their morning water to drink. We have none. At night I cannot see the dead man on my face. Daylight comes through the cracks, and I can see his locked eyes. I'm not big. Small rats do not wait for us to sleep. Someone is thrashing, but there's no room to do it in. If we had more to drink, we could make tears. We're all trying to leave our bodies behind. The man on my face has done it. It is hard to make yourself die forever. You sleep about and then return. In the beginning, I cannot fall because there's no room to. The men without skin are making loud noises. I am not dead. The bread is sea-colored. I'm too hungry to eat. The sun closes my eyes. Those able to die are in a pile. So this is just a little glimpse at her style, her very stylized way to portray things that are very painful. And she does that by simplifying. Instead of making it overly dramatic, she actually makes it simple. Simple, but painfully effective. Sorry, I went too far. So to go back to this idea of healing, and the way to create a future is, of course, drawing from the past, but also healing the past. And the only way to heal the past is by being together, by forming a community. So first of all, for the family, for Seta's family, the biggest trauma has to heal before she can return to the community. So here I have in the slide a little bit of explanation for how personally, from a very personal level, her family started to heal with Beloved among them. Although after that, Beloved went too far because she didn't know where to stop. But for a little while, the three women, Beloved, Seta, and Denver, are able to become a family. So before the arrival of Beloved, Seta and Denver were unable to form any relevant mother-daughter bond, so they weren't very close. because Denver was afraid of her mother knowing what she had done, because they're marked by their past of having no identity of their own except that of being property. What is more, Setha's two sons ran away from her, afraid of their mother and of Beloved's ghost. When Beloved returns from a space outside society's definitions as a ghost, she, of course, exists outside society, so she returns from a free space. She still has the mind of a baby and does not understand or accept the world as defined by the men without skin, which are the white men. In her mind, it is in her who lacks identity, but white people. She claims her identity and returns to set things right, even though she doesn't know exactly what she wants to do. Upon her return, the three women are able to connect in a new way. So there is a very significant and touching scene where they go skating, and they hold each other up, and the quote is, "Nobody saw them falling. Holding hands, bracing each other, they swirled over the ice." And of course, they fell, but nobody saw them falling, meaning that they became a family unit where nobody has to see how it works. They are the ones who form the web, the bond between them, and it's nobody else's business how they function together. So basically, the idea in this novel is that the past can heal through story. So the telling of the story of Beloved is Toni Morrison's way to help her own community heal through story. So when Setha stops either feeling guilty or rejecting her past, her community embraces her and her ghosts. And only then can she truly join the world of the living and understand that you're your best thing, as Paul D tells her. When she gives up living in the past, Beloved becomes the story of all, and they can all heal and cease to be uprooted. The guilt associated with the past that Setha represses but never forgets can be finally left behind for the sake of a tomorrow. So to illustrate the idea that Beloved is the story of all, I'll read a little from the ending of the book. So I will say that Beloved is accepted as the story of the whole community, and she becomes part of every one of them, so that her footprints belong to everybody. So now her ghost is everybody's ghost because they have embraced her. Everybody knew what she was called, but nobody anywhere knew her name. Disremembered and unaccounted for, she cannot be lost because no one is looking for her. And even if they were, how can they call her if they don't know her name? Down by the stream in back of 124, her footprints come and go, come and go. They are so familiar. Should a child, an adult, place their feet in them, they will fit. Take them out and they disappear again, as though nobody ever walked there. By and by, all the trace is gone, and what is forgotten is not only the footprints, but the water too, and what is down there. The rest is weather, not the breath of the disremembered and unaccounted for, or wind in the eaves, or spring ice thawing too quickly. Just weather. Certainly no clamor for a kiss. Beloved. And as a way to end, I will play again a little bit of Toni Morrison's voice. This is her reading of the beginning of the book. So hopefully this will give you more of an incentive to read. I'll just play a minute or two, just a little bit of a taste. 1, 2, 4. And spiteful, full of a baby's venom.
The women in the house knew it, and so did the children. For years, each put up with the spite in his own way. But by 1873, Setha and her daughter, Denver, were its only victims. The grandmother, baby Suggs, was dead, and the sons, Howard and Bugler, had run away by the time they were 13 years old. As soon as merely looking in a mirror shattered it, that was the signal for Bugler. As soon as 2 tiny handprints appeared in the cake, that was it for Howard. Neither boy waited to see more. Another kettle full of chickpeas smoking in a heap on the floor. Soda crackers crumbled and strewn in a line next to the doorsill. Nor did they wait for one of the relief periods, the weeks, months even, when nothing was disturbed. No, each one fled at once. The moment the house committed what was for him the one insult not to be borne or witnessed a second time. Within 2 months, in the dead of winter, leaving their grandmother, baby Suggs, Setha, their mother, and their little sister Denver, all by themselves in a gray and white house on Bluestone Road. It didn't have a number then, because Cincinnati didn't stretch that far. In fact, Ohio had been calling itself a state only 70 years when first one brother and then the next stuffed quilt packing into his hat, snatched up his shoes, and crept away from the lively spite.
She's still reading, but I wanted to share with you this drawing that I made when I was working on my thesis. It's a drawing, my representation of Beloved, watching her mother's face that was stolen by the man without skin. So this is just a drawing that I actually sent to her while she was still alive. I never heard back, but I know that it got to her because I knew somebody who worked with her. So this was my presentation. Sorry I couldn't stop the YouTube video of her, but I encourage you to read the book or hear her read it. There's the full recording that you can use. And hopefully you'll read all of her books. Thank you.